All right, so I know this isn't the engine rebuilding video, but change of plans on that one. I took it apart and the video is kind of boring because it's basically a time lapse of me just taking an engine apart. So I'm gonna wait for the rebuild parts to come in, like the bottom end stuff and the cams and things, and then I'll just have one entire video of disassembly and reassembly, so at least it's like bearable to watch. But today I'm gonna be doing some things on this. So this is my 91 Pajero turbo diesel import. So this thing's extremely slow, and they make like 80 horsepower, 90 horsepower from factory. Still everything bone stock. So the plans are to up the boost a little bit, make a intake for it, and then do a full stainless exhaust from the downpipe back, delete all the mufflers and things like that, and see how it goes. So yeah, I'm gonna get started on that. And I believe the turbo is also leaking, so I'm gonna start pulling everything apart and get the new gasket in there, and then start building the intake after that. I already have the EGR and stuff deleted, so that's out of the way, so at least it runs better without all the EGR junk. So yeah, I'm gonna get started on removing the stock air box, which is pretty restrictive, and then getting like a probably a 3-inch intake on there just to get as much airflow as possible. All right, so this is what we're going to be working with. I have some 2.5-inch stainless, and then a 3-inch elbow here to work with. This is probably going to be the intake pipe I'll use, and then these to kind of delete and work around what's already there. Got the new gasket on there, everything cleaned up the intake manifold, cleaned up this and all the gaskets. Pretty much every gasket was leaking on this, so it shouldn't leak anymore, hopefully, and spool a little faster because I had like 20 exhaust leaks and it was just bad. So yeah, I'm gonna throw it back on and get started on the intake. back together, and now I'm gonna start the intake. So I have this reducer, so it's a 2-inch outlet on the turbo. It's a small turbo, and then I have it step up to 3. So the plan is to either go above or below this and then out to here, because this is where the air comes from. Bring it over here and use the excess to kind of fill that gap. So I'm gonna try cutting it and then see how close you are. All right, so I got the first cut done and we're looking pretty good. I'm just gonna have to drop it a bit, so probably 1 or 2 pie cuts, and then bring it back around here, right by the little intake hole there. And that should be it. Throw a filter on the end and get to working on the exhaust. All right, so I've made all the cuts, and this second piece, actually, when I checked, it didn't quite line up. So I made the second cut 5 degrees more, so this is a 35 degree instead of the 215s. It's me pretty much where I want it. Right here, the filter is gonna be there. So I'm gonna take this all apart, clean it up, and tack weld it, do one more check, and then just finish welding it, throw the filter on, see what it looks like. Right, so here is the tack welded pipe. Decent height, comes by the intake hole there. It's good enough for me. So I'm gonna finish welding it, and then don't really hear intakes on these cars, and kind of interested to see if it's any louder or not. So yeah, gonna just put a quick time lapse and weld this up. Not perfect, but I'm not a welder, so it's good enough for me. Gonna throw this on here in 1 second and see how it is. Now I know this filter is actually a little too small, but it's all I had laying around, so I'm gonna order a larger one and probably trim this so I have the space filled up by the intake instead of this just tiny one pushed out to the edge. Now I'm going to get it up on the lift and take a look at the exhaust. All right, so I've got the car up on the hoist, and while I was looking at the exhaust, I noticed that it's just one piece from the header back, so I'm just gonna cut this muffler out and throw a straight section in there. But while I was in there, I actually noticed that the U-joint was blown out on the rear, so I'm just in the middle of replacing it with this new one. Throw that back in there and then get started on the exhaust. All right, pipes welded in. Now we're gonna take it out and listen to the exhaust and the intake and see if it sounds any different. turned the boost up, but it's hitting the pressure relief valve at about 15 pounds, which is what it's supposed to do, but I'll probably delete that and have it chill around, you know, 15, 18 pounds.